Hello, and welcome to Spirit Touched. We talked about Jesus Christ Superstar. Let's examine this superstar extraordinaire more closely. No one yet has been able to do the things he did or say the things he said with such authority. No other God has three parts. No other God has ever walked on this earth that he created or talked with us. Genesis 3:8a. Remember when we talked about the hymn in the garden? The chorus says, "He walks with me and talks with me." No other God has emotions. Check out Matthew 23:37, where Jesus stands weeping over Jerusalem, and Luke 19:41 or John 11:35 and 36. He was full of compassion, Matthew 15:32, and Exodus 33:19. Then in Exodus 15:3 it says he's a warrior. Verse 6 says his right hand is full of majestic power. In part B of verse 57, it says he showed his burning anger. Then verse 11 tells us there's no other God like him. Why his is found in verse 13. Then verse 23 repeats the chorus from the song of Miriam, sister of Moses. Get a hold of what it says. God threw the horses and chariots of Pharaoh's army into the Red Sea where they drowned. That Exodus from Egypt night. Now skip over to the New Testament. Check the story in John 4 through 41. Jesus knew the woman's entire marital history. He even knew the name of the man who climbed into a tree to see him. Now look at John 8:1 through 11. No one has the authority to tell us to go and sin no more. Now let's look at that song in J.C. Superstar again, where Mary Magdalene sings about Jesus as what appears to be an ordinary man that she loves so much. She knew what he had done for her. She heard him teach. She also saw some of the miracles. She knew, as did his mother, that this was no ordinary man, and it scared her. Who else but Jesus could have heard the woman in Luke 8, healed the woman in Luke 8:43 by her merely touching the hem of his garment? In that same chapter, go back to verses 22 through 25. The reason he could and did calm the storm is that he made the water, and as the Holy Spirit, he was the wind. Now look at how he healed the daughter of Jairus in Mark 5:35 through 41. He told her parents not to be afraid, but to believe. Then he just took hold of her hand and told her to get up. Now, see what kind of fisherman Jesus was. Check out John 21:4 through 8, when he told them to cast their empty nets on the right side of the boat. They caught over 400 after a whole night out with none. Then he said, "Bring some over here and let me cook breakfast for you." For another amazing healing, look at Luke 7 2 through 10. The centurion's servant was healed without Jesus even going into the house because the centurion didn't feel worthy enough for Jesus to come into his house. Think about that. When you get right down to it, none of us is worthy. Yet this superstar Messiah forgives and heals us anyway. Go back to the John 8 story and how he defended the woman he tells all those wanting to stone her for her adultery, that the one who is without sin cast the first stone. What happens? All of them leave because all of them are just as guilty, and they know from what he wrote in the sand that Jesus knows it. What did he write? Good question. Let's ask him when we get to heaven. John 1:1 tells us that in the beginning was the Word. Jesus was that Word personified. Now just think about what it would be like to be in a place where he was preaching or teaching and hear what he said. Mind-blowing, isn't it? Oh, how we need to hear that kind of preaching and teaching in today's churches. He could even enter an unlocked room like he did that first night that he arose from the grave. He did it again the next night only because Thomas wasn't there the night before, and Jesus knew of his doubts, so he came again so Thomas could see. I don't know about you, but a man who can heal from a distance, preach like he did, fish like he did, defend us like he does, cares for us like he does to the point of going to the cross for us, is what I call a superstar extraordinary. And oh yes, one who forgives us like he does. Eternity won't be long enough to pray or thank him for all of it. Before we close this out, let's look at John 14, 1 through 11. It's a conversation Jesus had with Thomas and Philip. In verse 7, Jesus sees them. Says to them, "If you know who I am, then you know who my Father is. If you have seen me, then you have seen him." These two men had been with him at least 2 years before then, seeing and hearing what he did and said, yet they still had not made that important connection. Take a careful look at verse 10. If we believe these things, then our hearts should not be troubled. Trusting God and his Son is the antidote for a troubled heart. Just know that if you have seen God working in your life, then you have seen Jesus. If you have not, then right now invite Jesus into your life and ask him to autograph your heart. Then you won't have to face your troubles alone ever again, because this superstar will never leave you. He will just forgive you, love you, and bless you. You may send your prayer request to He Answers TWO at gmail.com.